Welcome to Amjambo Time, the podcast where global issues meet local realities and where voices from the margins help us understand the world more clearly. I'm Eloge Willy Kaneza. Across the United States and here in Maine, communities that once felt safe are confronting a new climate of fear. Houses of worship, cultural centers, and the immigrant organizations are increasingly facing threats driven by hate, misinformation, and the political polarization. In this episode, we look at a rare and a powerful response. Faith leaders, immigrant advocates, and the civil society groups in Maine coming together across religious and cultural lines to protect vulnerable communities. At the center of this effort is LD 2107, a bill that would create a non-profit security grant program to help organizations strengthen their safety without sacrificing their mission. Through a conversation with Zach Schwartz, director of the Jewish Community Relations Council at the Jewish Community Alliance, we explore rising anti-Semitism, threats facing African and immigrant communities, and why solidarity, not silence, is essential in moments like these. This is a story about fear, yes, but also about courage, memory, and unity. You're listening to Amjambo Time.
You are listening to Amjambo Time on 90.9 FM, WMPG, Gorham, Portland, radio from the University of Southern Maine.
Zach Schwartz, for those who don't know you, can you describe who you are, please?
Yeah, so I'm the director of the Jewish Community Relations Council at the Jewish Community Alliance. We have many organizations, Jewish organizations in Maine, but the JCA is the biggest Jewish organization in southern Maine. And basically, if I could say in one sentence what I do is I build bridges between the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community. So whether that's doing cross-cultural programming with other minority groups or legislative bills that actually affect and impact all of our communities in Maine, that's what my domain is.
Let's talk about this bill.
Yep.
Why has this bill become a priority now, and what recent events accelerated its development?
Totally. So we're seeing, so I can first talk about from the Jewish community's perspective and then sort of the overall community perspective. The Jewish community right now is seeing the worst surge of anti-Semitism since the Holocaust. There are Jewish organizations in Maine, just last year alone in 2025, that received numerous death threats. There were flyers in Portland that told people that they need to take a D-Day and sort of violent action against the Jewish community. We've had Jewish children in schools, have had terrible things said to them, swastikas drawn on their computers, when they're studying the Holocaust. There's flyers in Bethel, Maine last year that said things like Jews no longer have a place in a healthy white society and they need to leave right now. Now, I know that there's actually a lot of other immigrant groups, so for example, African immigrant groups from Africa, Asia, that are actually being told similar things. You need to get out, you're not welcome. So what we were seeing is the biggest security threat to the Jewish community in our lifetimes, and at the same time, a lot of synagogues have no money. Right? There's people who will drive around their parking lots, call them and tell them they're going to kill them, and they don't have money to actually invest in security. So we realized that was a very pressing issue for our Jewish community. But I work with non-Jewish communities all the time. I mean, that's actually half my work is just supporting, collaborating with other communities. And I heard the same exact thing. And we know some of these communities have been dealing with this for decades, if not centuries. And we know other communities right now, just at the time of such heightened threat, are at risk. So, for example, we know mosques are, undergoing a lot of safety concerns. We know Christian churches, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, are literally being attacked. I mean, there were multiple attacks against churches last year. Even our friends, Unitarian Universalists, in the last 10 years, there's been a terrorist attack against Unitarian Universalists. We know that many communities from African countries right now are being attacked, have serious security concerns. So what I said is, wow, we all have this shared problem of safety, and I actually truly believe that no matter what, people from outside say, Christians, Jews, Muslims, we all come from the same faith. We all come from the same faith tradition. We're actually all part of the same people. And our friends, our Buddhist friends we have connections with, Unitarian Universalists. So basically what we did is we got together a coalition of Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, Unitarian Universalists, and we met with Representative Michael Brennan, and we told him, look, there's no statewide security grant program for houses of worship and nonprofits. There exists that at the federal level, but there's a lot of issues with that program. That program only allows for what they call security hardening of buildings, so it doesn't allow for armed security personnel, which we've heard from a lot of houses of worship. On their major holidays, that's what they need the most. So basically, this grant program provides an alternative source of funding for security for houses of worship across Maine. We've seen this program pass in at least 23 other states, so we're bringing it to Maine, and we're so excited that we have this unified coalition of all of our different faiths, all of our different communities working together.
I think you've already touched it, but what concrete threats have been identified against religious and cultural organizations in Maine in recent months?
Totally. Yeah, I can say that we specifically this summer, Jewish organizations in Maine received a letter saying that I'm going to kill all at this place. Just a few weeks ago across New England, a pipe bomb threat was sent to Jewish synagogues across the state. We had flyers in Portland saying that people need to take violent action against the local Jewish community. And some of them aren't necessarily violent, but we have seen, Jewish families even being told that, they're not welcome in a store simply because they have a connection to the land of Israel and that they need to get out of a store and they're not welcome there. And obviously that's a very sad thing and something we don't believe should happen to anybody.
Zach, why is this security program particularly important for immigrant and African communities that are often underfunded or and less visible?
Yeah, totally. So I just want to say that, I can speak both on behalf of the Jewish community, but my own personal life. I actually have found that, as someone who's an observant Jew who believes, in faith, some of my closest friends, one particular friend, he's Christian, and he's actually from Nigeria, but literally one of my best friends, and something that we always united over was faith. He was Christian, I was Jewish, but we had these conversations where you wouldn't even be able to tell we were different faiths because we're talking about our love of God, in our respective faiths. I will say that in Maine, we know that these immigrants from African countries are being scapegoated, are being told that they don't belong, whether on a national level, a local level, or a state level. As Jewish people, we can deeply relate to that. After our second temple was destroyed by the Romans in, I think, the year 130-something AD, we were in exile in diaspora for thousands of years, and everywhere we went, people said, you're not welcome here. And really all we were looking for is a better life. We wanted, to support the new countries that we were in, and we know that this is also the story of the African community in the United States is, the African community contributes, it contributes so many different things, and yet there's a lot of people, not all, but there's a lot of people who still say, I'm going to target this group or I'm going to threaten this group. And we just want to make sure that our African friends and our immigrant friends know that they have a friend in the Jewish community, that we care about them. We might not always agree on everything, but as Jewish people, as immigrants, as minorities ourselves, we want to stand with our African friends.
Now organizations like the Rwandese Cultural Association of Maine or Human Maine are part of the coalition. One can ask, what does their involvement change in particular terms?
Yeah. So the great part of our coalition is it includes houses of worship, so mosques, synagogues, churches. It includes vulnerable nonprofits. So this could be, reproductive clinics like Planned Parenthood, actually face a lot of threats because they, do things that people, they're just targeted. I mean, we all know that there have been bombings against reproductive health clinics. I would say that for the cultural organizations like the Rwandese Cultural Association of Maine and Kamai Maine, we know that these are specifically communities that have been targeted, not because of their religion, not necessarily because of their beliefs, but because of their nationality. So there's numbers of reasons why people would target communities, and one of them is people might just say, hey, there's too many Cambodians in Maine, we need to get them out. And I can actually personally say that I know that the Asian community has faced threats in the past or people threatening them. So we're grateful and honored to have our friends from the Rwandese Cultural Association and our friends from Kamai Maine to join us because just like the way some people hate Jews, some people might just hate African immigrants or Rwandese or Cambodians. And I don't even have to go into the reasons why because there is no good reason why. So,
Zach, have you identified specific risks facing African black communities in the current climate?
Yes. I mean, we know that there has been attacks on both verbal and physical. Of course, about 10 years ago, there was that horrific shooting at the Black church in the South, I believe in Charleston. So that's a very real security threat facing Black churches. We're actually very proud that Green Memorial AME Zion Church and Reverend Lewis is a part of this coalition. We're so honored to have a Black church with us. As we know, if you look at the news, you could see, attacks and rhetoric that targets the African community. And I really hate to say this, but it applies to our community as well. All it takes is one hateful person with a gun to change everything. And so we really want to make sure that for us, it's not a question of if an attack happens, it's when an attack happens. And we want to make sure that all our communities can say that we did everything we could to make sure that we were safe before that happens.
Now, what makes the bill different? How does the Maine nonprofit security grant program differ from existing federal programs?
Yeah. So there is the federal nonprofit security grant program. Right now, there are a ton of issues with that program, and the biggest one is that program only allows for the physical hardening and security of buildings. It doesn't allow for armed personnel and security personnel, and that's the most important thing. And one mosque leader actually told me that that's what they need, is they need armed security personnel at major Muslim events. So our statewide program 100% provides the funds for that, which we feel is crucial to safety. I would also say that right now I'm hearing from a lot of synagogues that because of the sort of turmoil within the current federal administration, but it's not limited to that administration, it's really any federal administration, there's always stipulations placed on those nonprofit security grant funds at the federal level. And for example, I know one synagogue right now that has been waiting for about 6 months to receive $30,000 in federal funds, and they don't even know if they're ever going to be able to get it. So this program really represents a statewide effort to provide an alternative source of those funds that we actually feel are going to be even more effective.
Why was it really important to include funding for security personnel, which is often excluded from federal grants?
Totally, great question. So we actually have heard in the Jewish community, and we know in the Jewish community that is the most important thing. Security cameras don't stop a gun. An armed person is really, police, but if that doesn't happen, an armed security guard is going to be the most effective, not only deterrent, but response to any violent attack. And I can say personally that from synagogues and the JCA's perspective, that's our most effective security measure. But I've also talked to at least one Muslim community member who said that that's what they need, is they simply need an armed presence at the most major Muslim holidays so they can remain safe.
I think in this world also, interfaith and intercultural dimension is not given to everyone, and then it's not everyone who understands that. This coalition brings together Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, Buddhist, immigrant, and LGBTQ plus organizations, of course. What message does that send today?
I think it sends one of unity, and I think it really sends one that we have so much more in common than what drives us apart. I mean, I could even just say with other faith traditions, Christianity, Islam, I mean, I wouldn't even say that we're cousins as Jews. We are brothers and sisters, Jews, Muslims, Christians. Jewish people also have a long history of working with Buddhists, and I know that there's also, interaction between all the different religions. As we both know, this is a time of heightened tensions and safety concerns, not only here but overseas. And I really feel that if we can show in Maine that we can get together, we can actually be a light to the world and show the world, look, Jews, Christians, Muslims, we can all unite and work together and collaborate together.
Thank you. In a tense international context, I think you mentioned that a little bit, particularly in the Middle East, how can local solidarity between communities be sustained?
Totally. I think it's understanding and learning each other's stories. I know that it's been very important for me to tell the story of the Jews, which goes back 5,000 years. And I'm happy to anyone who wants to know, come to the JCA and I'll give you the story. But I also think it's really important for us to learn about Christians, for us to learn about Muslims, for us to learn about Buddhists. I really feel that, what we do in Maine can actually serve as a light to the rest of the world, and just show that just because we have different religions doesn't mean we need to fight or we need to argue. And I actually think this coalition is proving that, is that we are all united, we are all one, and we all deeply care about what is happening to each other.
What can you tell leaders around Maine, but also the U.S.?
I would say that I think it's just really important for us This sounds, I don't want this to sound generic because, of course, everyone is always saying, like, let's get along. I actually personally feel, as a person of faith, that, of course, at the J, you have lots of Jewish people who, might be observant or might be more into the faith or the culture, and, it's all kind of different for Jews. But what I will say is that my faith in God and as a Jewish person has really been a beautiful thing, both for myself and just like, my whole life. And I have just been really moved to work with other faith leaders, as well as cultural leaders as well. But my message to the leaders is basically just, let's not divide. I think that we have something beautiful that actually unites all of us, which is humanity, and then also for the people who are, people of religion. I think that's something that truly makes us all brothers and sisters.
Do you think your part counts?
Do I think my part counts? Or?
The part of these organizations count, really, they can, change something.
Yes, I really do. I think that, actually, there's actually a number of people outside of Maine who have seen what we're doing and are very interested in this. I actually think that our coalition can inspire people and really let people know that, understanding, recognizing we're all not going to get along. We're all not going to always agree on everything. But here in America, we really truly believe every person has the right to have their faith, to gather in safety, no matter their color, race, religion, creed. So yeah, I might be a little crazy for saying this, but I actually believe that what we do in Maine will affect the rest of the world, to being an example. And I believe that, when we had Jews, Christians, and Muslims all in the same room, at that time, I said, this is the most important place on earth right now, because this is one of maybe the only places on earth where all of us are sitting around a table and committing to work together. So
today, many people, say that the world has become a global village.
Yeah.
In what ways has global conflict
contributed
to local tensions or security concerns among faith communities in Maine?
Yeah, great question. I do think that, obviously we can't control what's happening overseas, but I do think that global conflicts are affecting all of our communities in different ways. Obviously the sort of most obvious one is how the Israel-Palestine conflict is affecting relations between Jews and Muslims in the United States. But we could talk about the Muslim-Hindu conflict. We could talk about what we were talking about before, different countries in Asia or Africa that have had a lot of issues with each other that come here, and then some of those issues still remain. That's actually one of the reasons why I really love the promise of this country, is that it offers a clean slate, that we can come, maybe our people fought and are still fighting each other overseas, but we can come to America, we can come to Maine, and I'm the child of an immigrant myself. For example, I come from Taiwan. My mom comes from Taiwan. She converted to Judaism. My dad is born Jew. But Taiwan and China, as many people know, don't get along. But when I'm in Maine and when I'm in America, Chinese, Taiwanese, we're best friends. We're brothers and sisters. And that's what I would say, too, about Jews and Muslims. I really think that us being here gives us the chance to actually make a difference and say, no, we will get along. Like, we will believe in coexistence. We will believe in peace in a way that being overseas, they can't do that because they're, enmeshed in war. So yeah, that's really one of the reasons why I love what we can do here, is that we can actually provide the opposite example. So
now, how soon could nonprofits access the funds if the bill is passed?
Yeah. So great question. I'm actually looking at this bill language right here. In terms of, I would say within 12 months, I do know that the Office of the Attorney General just needs to simply develop guidelines and criteria. But I might have been looking at an earlier part of the bill, but we would say within a year is when we would expect the fund to become active.
Now, what criteria will be used to determine which organizations qualify as high risk?
Yeah, so we're actually working with the Office of the Attorney General. As of right now, it might switch because the bill is going before Judiciary and soon, and some language might be amended. But basically, the Office of the Attorney General is going to develop guidelines and criteria. What they're going to be looking for is organizations that are experiencing heightened risk. So any organization that has received death threats or might be a target nationally or locally are going to be first in line to receive those funds. I do think, though, that I don't want to speak for the Attorney General's office. They will ultimately be the ones to determine that, but we believe they will use a fair and impartial process.
Now that one can say it's a lot of money,
Yeah, $2 million.
So how will transparency and oversight be ensured in the allocation of the 2 million funds?
So we obviously would want the Attorney General and believe that this is how they would act anyways, is because it's public fund, public money, they would be fully transparent about which organizations are receiving money. What I will say is that this language, the tenor and gist of the bill is complete. This will establish a security fund. I'll just read off what the summary says right now. This bill establishes the Maine Nonprofit Security Grant Program in the Office of the Attorney General to provide grants to assist nonprofits organizations to improve security. The office will administer the program and will develop guidelines and criteria to award grants to nonprofits organizations using a request for proposals process. So basically, it'll be a fair process. It'll open it up, and then all the different organizations will be able to apply. I do think that because we started this bill, we're championing it. Office of the Attorney General is obviously going to have, the final language and how they're going to be able to implement it.
What message does this coalition send to immigrant communities who may feel increasingly today targeted?
We care about your safety. And that comes not just from me, but our entire coalition. So I think I could fairly speak. This is probably the one thing I could say on behalf of the entire coalition is that we care about your safety. We care about everyone's safety. And we know right now, as the child of an immigrant myself, my mother is an immigrant. She came over here when she was 30 years old. I deeply care about immigrants. Jewish community deeply cares about immigrants, being an immigrant community ourselves. Jewish people don't realize this. They're only 0.2% of the world's population. There's only about 15 million Jews in the world. There's 2 billion Christians, 2 billion Muslims, and then there's about 15 million Jews. So we're very small people, but I think that really, to us, that's why it's so important for us to support and work with other minorities and immigrants, because we all are in this together.
Zach, how does this coalition balance faith-based concerns with broader civic and non-profit interests?
Yeah, totally. It's great because actually, you have a member of this coalition that is, for example, what they call the pro-life movement, so very against, abortion, and then you have another member of this coalition that, is a reproductive clinic and offers abortions and sort of, is politically unpopular in some circles because of that. I really think that speaks to how broad the coalition is. What I would say is that it's just the same message, is that we still can put aside politics and say, look, we care about everyone's safety. I think that, the civic, a house of worship might have different values than a nonprofit or civic organization, but the house of worship can still say, we don't believe a terrorist attack should ever happen to you. It actually should happen to no one in the United States or in general. There should be no attacks. Everyone should be able to be in safety. And I think that's actually the beautiful thing about this bill, is it shows we can put aside political differences and say, look, at the end of the day, we don't want anything bad to happen to you either.
I believe we want to build something which will last.
Yeah.
Do you see this interfaith coalition continuing beyond this bill?
100%, and this bill has been amazing for us all getting to know each other better. I will say that actually, as part of the results of this bill, the Rwandese Cultural Association of Maine is a part. We're talking to them right now about doing an event this year to support and commemorate the remembering of the genocide against the Tutsis. So they could, and then I can, for example, say with the Cambodian community, we're actually doing our Jewish-Asian Friendship Dinner in May, which we would love to have Amjambo at. We actually have already, with a lot of these partners, have already started to develop events and sort of programming to learn each other's stories, and that's actually directly come out of this bill.
Do you see, could this bill serve as a model example for other states with growing immigrant populations?
Yep. I believe it can. I will say, I would love to say that we invented this concept. 23 other states have passed this bill, or a version of it, often with full support from immigrant minority communities. So as much as I'd like to say, this is all us, we're actually really just following a model that other states have pioneered. We believe that, if we're the 24th state, we 100% believe the other 25 states should do it, or 26 states should do it. And the reason why is it promotes dialogue between our groups. And then from that dialogue comes understanding, events, programs, that sort of thing.
How can community now, members, groups, and non-profits support or engage with this initiative?
So when we have a public hearing for this bill, so it's called LD 2107. You can just Google it and see the language. Definitely submitting public testimony on behalf of the bill. Feel free to get in touch with me personally if you'd like to sign our open letter. But what I would say is that in the next few weeks, there will be a public hearing for the bill. And it's just really important that everyone who's interested in supporting this submits public testimony for that. So We'd love to have you as part of our coalition, but even past that, the bill's already been introduced. We just need people to publicly support this bill, call their representatives, let them know. LD 2107, you got to pass that.
Any word to the world?
Yep. Any word to the world? I would say that I just think that, I've said it before, but I really just think that, when we had that meeting and all of us, someone from the Catholic, Black community, someone from the Asian community, someone from the Jewish, Muslim, Christian community, truly, I felt that was the most important part, that was almost like the center of the world at that time, because that was probably one of the only places in the world where we were all getting together. And I would also just say that, the other message I had is, we care about all communities. The Jewish community cares about the safety of so many different communities that we've been linked to historically, including the African community in different countries in Africa. And I also just want to say thank you to Amjambo for the amazing work that you do. It's so important. I know that we really want to support your paper or work with your paper going forward. I read Amjambo, actually. I get the print version, and I think it's amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a paper like this where it's 7 different translations in all these different languages. I think that's, as a former journalist myself, the work you're doing is amazing because it's giving information that's accessible to so many different people. So actually, I have a message for Amjambo, which is, please just keep up the amazing work. You have so many people, not just the Jewish community, but you have so many people supporting you, and it's really just vital, the work that you're doing.
Zach Schwartz, thank you for talking with Amjambo.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to have talked to you, and looking forward to speaking again in the future. So.
Bless you so much.
Thank you.
As we close today's episode, one message stands out clearly. Security is not just about locks, cameras, or guards. It is about dignity, belonging, and the right to exist without fear. From synagogues to mosques, churches to cultural associations, the coalition behind LD 2107 shows what is possible when communities refuse to be divided by hate. Their work reminds us that history, from the Holocaust to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, teaches a painful but urgent lesson. Violence does not begin with weapons, but with words, exclusion, and indifference. What's happening in Maine is more than a local legislative effort. It is a model of solidarity in a fractured world. A reminder that when one community is threatened or at risk, and when communities stand together, they become stronger. If you remain, your voice matters. Engage, testify, and speak out. And wherever you are listening from, remember, protecting vulnerable communities is not optional. It is a shared responsibility. Thank you for listening to Amjambo Time. I'm Eloge Willy Kaneza. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay human.
Mahirwe gira amararo n'amaramuko abana bawe batengamare ziri ntambara ziri ntugunda. Call your leaders, call your children, be united for the peace and your children's welfare. Enemy of Africa shouldn't be an African. Onganzi u Africa, nakawe umunya Africa. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, we Africa. Yeah, we Africa. Africa. Yeah, we Africa. Africa. Tengera, 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 Africa. Tengera, 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 Africa. Tengamara, 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 Africa. Tengamara, 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 Africa. Yeah, mama land, why still all these conflicts? Oh, mama land, why still extreme poverty? Yet you have the diamonds in your land. All the wealth in the hands of some groups. Oh, mama land, wipe the tears of your children. Oh, mama land, give the chance your young boys and girls. Stop the lies, oh, stop the violence, oh. We want an Africa for the African. Yeah, we Africa, Africa.